Chapter 4. The Prophecy. After an exhaustive study on the scriptures about the Antichrist on the evening of December 30th, 1973, I retired for the evening about 11:30 p.m. It was on this night that I had the first dream in which I saw myself sitting in a rocking chair rocking to and fro. A cool breeze was blowing over my face. I was so comfortable that it made me doze off to sleep, and I felt as though I did not have a care or need in the world. On a bed next to me was my mother, who was dying. Her plight did not concern me at all. I was not at all worried about her. Then I felt a sharp pain in the tips of my fingers on my left hand. Looking down from the chair where I was sitting, I saw a giant Great Dane dog biting on my fingers. The dog appeared to be very vicious, but I was not afraid of him. I slowly got up and enticed him to the front door. As he walked out, I slammed the door shut. I could hear him running around the house, heading for the back door. As I ran through the house, I reached the door just as the big dog reached it. As he started to leap through the door, I slammed it shut and put my shoulder against it. I woke up, and this was the end of dream number 1. 2 nights later, I had a second dream in which I saw myself standing on the door of a stoop of a strange house, a 3-story house. The house was an old house, but it was new to me. Inside the house I could hear the awful wailing of a dog. Opening the door, I walked inside. With no people and no furniture, the house was empty. However, I could still hear the dog barking. Looking all around, I could not find anything. After walking upstairs, I found that part of the house was empty too. I could still hear the barking dog, whose barking was both wailful and threatening. At the head of the stairs I saw a closet, and I opened the door. Inside the closet door were 2 dogs that seemed to be twins except for their coloring. One was white and the other was black. They were of a small breed similar to a wire-haired terrier or a Scottish terrier. The black dog was lying stretched out on his side as if he were dead, and the white dog was sitting on top of the black dog. The white dog was barking, looking at me with evil eyes. I knew immediately that he was extremely evil. He tried to hypnotize me, and I knew by some supernatural means that the dog was determined to destroy me, but he had no power over me. Since I knew that I had supernatural protection, I was not afraid. Suddenly the dog came out of the closet and went out to meet the people on the street. He was so little and cute that people would stop and pet him. Then he would hypnotize them, and they would float up to a giant furnace and burn. The dog disappeared quickly. I turned to further investigate the building and heard a knock at the front door. When I opened the door, there stood my best friend. I was surprised to see him. "Come in, Larry," I said. As he walked through the door, I suddenly knew that it was not my friend, but the white dog with the evil eyes disguised as my friend. He was making a deliberate attempt to destroy me, yet I was not afraid. When he tried to hypnotize me, I hypnotized him, and he floated up into the furnace. The disguise burned up, leaving the evil white dog laughing at me. This was the end of dream number 2. A night was skipped, and then dream number 3 came, which I saw myself walking down a strange trail in an unfamiliar locale. Snow-capped mountains and trees, tall trees, were all around me. Carrying a sack of dog food on my shoulder, I came to a newly built ranch-style house that I had never seen before. As I approached, I could see through a large picture window of the house. The number of the people were seated at the table, and they were eating. Some of the people were small children, but most of them were grown men. I realized that all the people were from my family, but I did not recognize most of them. I recognized the one that came out and invited me inside to eat was my sister-in-law. I declined with the excuse that it would be absolutely necessary that I go to the backyard and feed the dog. Walking into the backyard, I laid the sack of dog food on the shelf and started to prepare it for the dog. At that very moment, a large German shepherd dog attempted to attack me. He charged, circled, and snapped at me continually, but he was unable to bite. I felt an invisible shield around me. I had no fear. I continued to prepare the food while the dog persisted in his attempt to attack. Suddenly, as if it came from a giant megaphone in the sky, There was a new announcement which informed me that my father had been assassinated in a political coup of some kind. The message was not entirely clear. This was the end of dream number 3. Now I knew for sure that the dreams were bringing me to a special message by supernatural means. I did not know what they meant or why I should be the recipient of such a message. On the second night after the third dream, which was the 7th day in the series, I received the 4th and 5th dreams. In the dream number 4, I saw myself walking down a cobblestone street with neat white small cottages on each side. There were other people walking in both directions on this street. Some of them were in groups laughing and talking. I could tell from their accent that they were English, and I could tell from the terrain and the architecture that I was not in America. Therefore I concluded that I was in England. I came to a house which I knew to be mine and saw my family as I entered the home. I had never seen these people before, but I knew them to be my family. Speaking with an English accent, they greeted me and then continued their discussion. I walked out into the backyard where I was greeted by my large collie dog. I started to play with him and my family came out to watch me play with the collie. Just at that moment my father walked through the back gate into the yard, and without warning the dog attacked him. I went to his aid in an effort to get the dog off of him. While the attack was going on, my family was laughing and clapping their hands as if they were cheering for the dog. I woke up and this ended dream number 4. It was as if I was jarred awake by the impact and realization that God was talking to me through these dreams. It brought me on first a feeling of awe, then worry. The question why kept coming to my mind. I must have remained awake and kept going over and over the dream for more than an hour before I finally went back to sleep. Dream number 5 came after going back to sleep. In this dream I saw myself walking down my old hometown, down the street of my own hometown. I was en route to the city hall, where the newly elected mayor was going to appoint me to some official position with the new city administration. I was not sure what this position would be, neither was I sure what my title would be. And when I reached the city hall, I walked into the lobby where several people were standing, walking, and were talking in small groups. I joined one of these groups, and as I was discussing the new mayor, he walked in. His name was White, and he was a physician. Dr. White immediately started to explain what my position was to be with the city government and what my title would be. I could not understand what he was saying, and he seemed to become annoyed with me with my failure to understand. At this point, 2 police officers walked into the lobby. Both officers were black, and both officers had 2 dogs on leashes beside them. The mayor announced to all in the lobby that these 2 officers had brought in 2 new police dogs the city had just acquired, and that the city was very proud of the 2 dogs. At that instant, some of the inmates in the city jail escaped and ran past where we were standing. The police officers unleashed the dogs and gave them command to catch the criminals. As the dogs charged, they ran past the escaping criminals and attacked some innocent bystanders. Running after the dogs, I screamed a command for them to stop the attack. The dogs immediately obeyed my command and came back to me with their tails tucked between their legs, showing fear of me. Dr. White came up to me and said, "We need you to retain our dogs." I replied to the mayor, "It's not your dogs that need retaining, it's your people." The mayor then started to explain to me again what my title would be with the city. Still unable to understand what he was saying, I was invited by Dr. White to go outside the building with him, where we could get into his car and further discuss the offer. Outside the building, we walked up to the mayor's automobile, which was new to me. Ironically, though, the car was blue and white, 1953 model Chevrolet. The mayor asked that I sit in the front seat, and I stated that he would sit in the back seat. When I got in the car, there was a third person sitting behind the wheel. This person's face was totally blank, however. I was not at all concerned about him, even though I could not see any face on him. Putting my right arm on the back of the car seat, I turned my head so that I could face the mayor who, by this time, had gotten into the vehicle. I asked him to explain in detail what my position would be and what title I would hold. As he started to tell me, the car suddenly began rolling backward down a grade and slammed into a tree. At this point, I woke up. By this time, I knew for a fact that God had been talking to me and that He had given me an important message, but I could not understand what He was telling me, though. I knew that God had said something of this nature, that it had to be mightily important. But whatever it was He was telling me, I did not know. This kind of experience was too important to be wasted. I knew that God would let me experience this sort of thing, that He would make provisions for me to know what it meant. After pondering these happenings for several days, I decided to put all the dream on tape, not willing to trust to memory anything so as important as this. During the next 7 years, I played these tapes before many different groups and recounted all the dreams in hope that God had given an interpretation to someone that was listening. This never happened. The interpretation that I did receive did not come until after the miracle, and then only in part. Parts of the dream still remain a mystery. The interpretations that I did receive will be dealt with in the latter part of this book.